Substituting yarns is not just about matching the yarn weight. Critical pieces of a yarn's identity, which can make or break your project, include the fiber type, the yarn construction, and yes, the yarn weight, but not just the weight category. When you make a substitution, you will most often be trying to match the gauge of the recommended yarn, but you may be substituting because you want to modify the other properties of the yarn. If you don't want to modify them, then you do need to understand them, so you'll be able to make a one-to-one match. The main fiber types you'll encounter are protein, cellulose, and synthetic. Protein includes sheep wool, cashmere goat wool, alpaca, all keratin fibers, and silk. There are other protein fibers out there, like llama, camel, yak, possum, and kiviute, but for the purposes of substitution, we're going to be focusing on the products most commonly available. Different breeds of sheep produce wool with different characteristics: springy, wiry, puffy, shiny. Merino dominates the market and has since the 19th century. They're super productive and soft, fine wool sheep. Shetland and Icelandic sheep are primitive breeds that produce coarser, warmer wool. Another breed widely available for hand knitting is the blue-faced Leicester, a long wool breed which produces bouncy, crinkly wool. There are small flocks of heritage breeds around the US and the world, but they aren't producing yarn for hand knitting on a large scale. They all have unique characteristics, and it can be fun to buy a hank and learn about the wool through a small project. Merino wools for sale in the US are often superwash, which means they've been treated to survive machine washing. This opens the scales on the fibers and means they don't felt, but do pick up dye better. Superwash yarns also droop when dampened. They don't block the same way non-superwash wools do. So substituting a superwash for a non-superwash wool is going to have a drastic effect if the pattern expects your stitches to cling to each other. You can't safely steek superwash wool without stitching it down with a sewing machine and thread, because no feltability means the strands are going to try to slither out of your reinforcing stitches. Likewise, a nylon content wool like a sock yarn is not going to have the grippy properties of a non-superwash fingering weight wool. If you're working a project that includes stranded colorwork or lace, you won't get the same performance out of superwash wool. But it has enhanced durability, so you have to ask, is this project going to get treated roughly? Will there be abrasion, machine washing? Is it going to make a lot of contact with the floor, with body oils? Is the person I'm giving it to going to take time to carefully hand wash it? Those primitive breeds from Iceland and Shetland and other yarns made in Europe are intended for traditional sweaters and accessories worn in very cold climates and often not worn next to the skin. If you're knitting or crocheting for a recipient in the US, be aware of the trade-off between softness and warmth, and the people who live here often prefer softness. We aren't used to layering and stomping around in the snow here on the edge of the deep south. A smooth, bouncy superwash yarn like Malabrigo Rios may convince your cranky relatives that wool, in fact, does not make them itch. This hat is made from Icelandic wool. It is very coarse to my hand. I wouldn't want to wear this directly next to my skin. My husband has very thick curly hair and he finds this hat quite comfortable to wear. But I made a cowl out of this yarn and sent it to his aunt and she sent it back. I was really offended, and then I put it on and I understood why she did that. This yarn is Malabrigo Rios. This is really smooth superwash merino, and it is like butter against the skin. It's really great for accessories. Anybody who says that wool is itchy, give them something made out of this and see what they say. Alpaca is a droopy, warm yarn with extremely long fibers compared to wool. Don't use it in projects that require grippiness or stitch definition. Do use it for super warm next to skin accessories. This is an alpaca shawl, and it drapes really, really well. I have done the boomerang style. This is from the Curls 2 knitted shawl book, and I've added a crocheted edging to it to extend it. But it just drapes really well, and it forms this curly Q shape. Acrylic is a synthetic petroleum-based fiber. It's not environmentally friendly. It doesn't biodegrade, and it sheds microplastics into the water system when washed, but it is washable and durable, and it shares characteristics with wool. It's warm, it's got that fluffy halo and bloom that makes stitches plump up and fill in gaps. That makes it good for winter wear and for color work. It doesn't felt. It's sometimes slippery or stiff compared to wool. Some of those slippery acrylics like Karen Simply Soft and Knit Picks Brava are maybe a closer approximation of alpaca than of wool. The lowest in budget acrylics like Red Heart Super Saver are coarse like Shetland or Icelandic wool. Some crafters find them too abrasive to work with, but they will soften up when heat blocked or run through the dryer. You should definitely learn how to block acrylic because it takes a little extra work to make an acrylic project look its best. The fact that it's plastic means it doesn't want to form itself and fill itself in like wool until after it's received some deliberate and drastic treatment from you. Acrylic is good for children's clothing, for home goods and accessories that might be treated roughly. If you're making a gift for someone who lives in a nursing home or some other place where their clothing is definitely going to get thrown into a washing machine, you should use acrylic. Cellulose fibers lack the loft and halo of protein fibers. They absorb water more readily, they don't hang on to body heat. That means they're good for summer clothing. They're denser and droopier than wool. When you hold a cellulose fiber next to a protein fiber in the same weight classification, you're going to be confused because they don't look like they're the same thickness. A cotton DK yarn may look like a heavy fingering weight to you. That's because you're used to the fluffy, fuzzy margins of wools and acrylics. If you work that DK cotton up to the same density that you would a fingering weight wool, it's going to be heavy and stiff. Cottons are usually intended to be worked up with more breathability than wool. The stitches are going to look a little gappier. This is a blend of cotton and rayon, and it's a DK weight, but it doesn't look like a DK weight to me. This hat was worked up in a DK weight superwash yarn, and when I compare the floats on the inside to this strand of cotton, they don't look the same at all, yet they're both labeled as DK weight. Crafting cottons like Lily Sugar and Cream are just what they say they are. They're yarn for crafts. There are lots of other cotton yarns out there that are perfectly suited for garments, toys, blankets, and accessories. So if you found crafting cottons unpleasant to work with or been dissatisfied with the look of your finished objects, don't give up on cottons, try a Pima or mercerized cotton. Linen is the product of the flax plant. That's one of the oldest fibers that humans use. Linen yarn can be stiff, but it softens up when washed. Rayon is a human-made cellulose fiber. It's created using plants and it's chemically reconstructed into a soft drapey material that's great for upscale warm weather accessories. Rayon products include viscose, modal, tencel, lyocell, and bamboo yarns. This is a rayon blend. It's rayon and cotton. It's very heavy. It's also really drapey. This is one of my favorite projects. It's just gargantuan. It was designed to be worked up in an acrylic or wool fingering weight. I worked it up in a sport weight viscose, and it is huge. All of these fibers are going to react to washing and wear a little differently. Use caution when combining yarns made from different fibers in the same project.